So happy Thanksgiving to you. We're going to talk later this week about Thanksgiving Jesus style. It's really interesting. In evangelical churches, there's sort of a thing that happens with communion where it's free form. You know, the Lutheran Church and the Catholic Church, it's a very prescribed way you speak. And it's always the same verbiage. I like that verbiage. And in that way, I'm a traditionalist. But there's this thing that happens sometimes in evangelical churches where people talk about what Jesus said, but there's this very specific thing I've always loved when Jesus was giving the first communion. Is he took bread, he broke it, and he gave thanks. And he, being fully God and fully human at that point, you could say was thanking himself, but of course he'd given up deity, in a sense, to be with us. So we'll talk about being thankful the way Jesus was, Thanksgiving Jesus style. We'll do that later this week. President Trump has a truly, well, there's some really good nominees, but there are a couple who are unbelievable shoe-licking, boot-licking tyrants, or they are unbelievably useful idiots. So we'll talk about that. And speaking of idiocy, can you help us figure out, me and Alex are having a debate, whether this thing is staged or real. It's supposedly a cop in California, and that would be the place to stage something like this because you could go get the uniforms, etc. But so messed up is society that you can't really tell because the scenario is perfectly believable. We'll talk about that and President Trump's nominees, some other stuff. Do this with the help of our free speech channel. It's the Todd Herman Show.substack.com and with God Almighty.
The Todd Herman Show is 100% disapproved by big pharma, technocrats, and tyrants everywhere. Now, from the high mountains of free America, here's the Emerald City exile, Todd Herman.
Today is a day the Lord has made, and these are the times through which God has decided we shall live. Let's start with the good. Brendan Carr is going to head the FCC under President Trump in all likelihood. And Brendan Carr has spoken out against the censorship industrial complex. He's spoken out against the Mockingbird media lying to people. He has questioned their FCC licenses, and he just did this directly. Los Angeles Times wrote on Twitter how Trump's FCC chief pick could make life more difficult for media companies. And Brendan Carr answered on Twitter, broadcast licenses are not sacred cows. These media companies are required by law to operate in the public interest. If they don't, they're going to be held accountable, as the Communication Act requires. Now, I'm fully aware of the fact that I have two national radio shows that are under the auspice, under the control, so to speak, of the FCC. Fully clear and understanding that they could come at us. So they could come out to Radio America, which syndicates our weekend show, or they could come out to American Family Association. This isn't syndicate because it's an O&O. Those are their radio stations, 180 FM radio stations. So they could come at us, and I say, go ahead. Now, I'm not the one who has to defend this. It's not my money that would have to defend an FCC investigation. But go ahead, because I know how these companies work. I know AFA is not a company, it's an organization, American Family Association. I know how it works. The books are transparent. The giving's transparent. People can easily go take a look at how the money's spent. It's stewarded very well. We're very open about what we do. There is absolutely no editorial pressure there. You know, I'm on a network with Jenna Ellis, and Jenna is seen as a traitor by a lot of Trump supporters, because she'd said the election was stolen, and then when she got in trouble, she said it wasn't. I happened to have had dinner with Jenna, find her to be a really likable woman. I'll probably have her on the show at some time. First time I met her, I just walked up and said, hey, Jenna, you know, you and I disagree about something very important politically and legally. We really disagree, and I know that. But I want you to know that I believe we can still be friends, and I don't like hearing people threatening you and wanting you chased out of the country and killed, and that's just unforgivable. And there was this little bond created. So Jenna and I are on the same network, and Jenna has her views and I have mine. And I've never at one time has anyone in leadership at AFA ever said anything to me to speak this way. And likewise on Radio America, which is owned by a conservative foundation. Never a single time has anyone said a single thing about point of view or story selection other than to talk about how to make the show better. It's never about, we need you to toe this line. Now, that's not the case in a lot of conservative media. It's not. There are entire networks that told hosts, you will endorse President Trump or you will not have a show. And some of those threats came true. So there are some conservative networks that I don't know that would do that well under FCC review. But if you're going to say that, simply publish it. Simply say our radio syndication network is pro-Trump, period. And then no problems. FCC has nothing to say to you. The challenge with the Mockingbird media is this. There is something driving these editorial decisions, and it's not money because it's costing them money. MSNBC is rumored to be for sale. And yeah, it would be hilarious if Elon Musk bought it and put Alex Jones on all day. It would be very hilarious. And I could see Elon Musk doing that, but not for the money they're going to try to get for that ridiculous network. So Brendan Carr is a great choice. President Trump has made some baffling decisions on two other positions. One of them very, very close to my heart. And that has, of course, to do with so-called public health policy. We'll talk about that and that pick. We'll do that lightly here. I'm going in depth on it on Substack today, so you'll be able to see that. Is that today or tomorrow? Does that come out? It comes out tomorrow. We're doing an in-depth on that tomorrow on this pick. So we'll get into one of his picks that has to do with labor here in a second, because this is utterly baffling. It's disconcerting. It should really concern all of us, like it concerns me. Right now, my friends at Bioptimizers are doing something that I've not seen them do. It is an entire site-wide sale. The entire catalog of things at Bioptimizers is 25% off. And you've heard me talk about P3OM. That's the prebiotic, very, very powerful. Make sure you get more nutrition for every bite of food that you purchase. Magnesium Breakthrough for sleep and relaxation. Masszymes, of course, to help you produce more amino acids in your body, 1,200% more, which is the building block of proteins. And of course, that's the building block of muscles. So there is also great quality whey proteins. There is Sleep Breakthrough. There's a whole suite of products and learning tools, books that they publish. There's Capex, which is an enzyme Erma blend infusion. This helps get fat burning on your body, particularly if you're trying to lose fat as you sleep. That's incredibly helpful. There's a Bioptimized digestive health stack. So that can help you digest foods and not have the gut problems, which leads to sleep problems. And a lot of people I've learned in the podcast family are doing the keto paleo thing, and they start that up after Thanksgiving. There's a keto paleo stack with Capex and P3OM and HCl. That's a hydrochloric acid booster in your body. So you can really digest the food and get everything out of it that you need. It's 25% off every single product at Bioptimizers. All you have to do is go to bioptimizers.com/Todd and use promo code Todd to get 25% off and to qualify for $100 in free gifts from the people at Bioptimizers. Bioptimizers.com/Todd, promo code Todd. Eric Erickson's a friend of mine. I haven't spoken with in a long while. He and I disagree quite a bit on President Trump, but Eric is a good man. And Eric wrote about Trump's pick to be the labor secretary, Lori Chavez de Ramírez. She wants amnesty for illegal aliens, forced unionization of private sector employees. She's opposed to school choice, and she's expanded unionization of government employees. Sound good? For whatever reason, President Trump has chosen this lady to be his labor secretary. Richard Hanania, who is no enemy to President Trump whatsoever. He's the president of the CSPI, founder of the UT Austin, Columbia SAPI. It's a labor organization for labor choice. He writes about this woman. Lori Chavez de Ramírez, Trump's pick to be the next labor secretary, is a disaster. Her views are an affront to everything conservatives believe and what they fought for. Conservatives have a fondness for saying, make America Florida. They recognize that policies have worked at the state level, which is why red states have seen such more growth in GDP and population flows. The American people are voting with their feet. Chavez de Ramírez's motto can be summed up as Make America California. She wants to force red states to adopt the labor policies that have caused massive migration outflows from the more liberal parts of the country. Republicans at the state level in recent years have been making impressive gains, riding the backlash to DEI and COVID restrictions to take on the teachers' unions, and in many states have now enacted universal school choice. This pick threatens to undo many of these gains. Chavez de Ramirez's track record in Congress raises significant concerns about her alignment with conservative principles, particularly her overt support for labor unions at the expense of worker freedom and state sovereignty. Her actions demonstrate a troubling pattern of prioritizing union interests over policies that protect workers' rights to make independent choices. Chavez de Ramirez's sponsorship of the Public Service Freedom to Negotiate Act represents a clear federal overreach to state authority. The bill would undermine the labor reforms implemented by Republicans in states like Wisconsin and Florida, which have successfully limited the power of public sector unions to protect taxpayers and ensure public or government efficiency. By supporting such a measure, Chavez de Ramirez advocates for a one-size-fits-all federal approach that disregards states and their borders. Do you think that teachers' unions have too much power in California or New York? Have you read about the financial catastrophes that's unfolding in Illinois, a state that is bleeding residents and has become an economic basket case? Imagine a Republican labor secretary who believed Florida and Texas must adopt these same policies. Kamala Harris has never supported anything this radical. After all we've learned about unions through COVID, are we going to end up with more policies, more radical than we saw from the Biden administration? Chavez Ramirez's endorsement of the Protecting Rights to Organize Act threatens to dismantle critical worker protections in right-to-work states. Right-to-work laws, which exist in 27 states, guarantee that workers cannot be forced to join or financially support a union as a condition of employment. Chavez de Ramirez's support for abolishing these laws through federal intervention is an affront to worker choice and autonomy, effectively forcing individuals to fund union activities regardless of their personal beliefs or interests. Chavez de Ramirez has the backing of America's Federation of Teachers President Randi Weingarten and Teamster President Sean O'Brien. These are the people who fought every attempt by Republicans to free themselves from the grips of education bureaucracies and public sector unions. They're the ones who forced children to be masked for years and had to be dragged kicking and screaming into opening the schools again. Now, the fact that this woman is being considered for labor secretary is going to be a great big test for Republicans. This is a payoff in all likelihood. Not to Randi Weingarten, who continued to scream that President Trump is literally the orange Hitler, is going to murder the world, but to the Teamsters, who either stood aside and in some cases, in fact, appeared to endorse President Trump. It's a payoff. If they want to continue to own the auto sector, let them have it, but not the government sector. Government employee unions have destroyed the federal government. That is why we have civil servants, so-called, who cannot be fired. It is a fact that they launder money to give to Democrats. It is a fact that they participated in the takedown of our government and our states. They're some of the reasons that we can't force government employees to actually do their jobs. They didn't have to show up. This is one of the two picks that is particularly catastrophic for not just the conservative movement, for Make America Great Again. You can't make America great while you have people like this floating around. Just think about the judiciary. Think about the DOJ and what's gone on there. See, they have the same form of protection. It's not necessarily union. The employees have that. The bosses have the protection of being just the bosses. Glenn Kirshner talked about D.C. judges and how they're being shielded from being actually held to account for what they've been doing. And they shouldn't have the shield. There shouldn't be something that works for them.
Listen, the federal judiciary, let me say, particularly in Washington, D.C., in the federal trial court, which is where Donald Trump's lawlessness and vindictive prosecutions, if he tries to undertake vindictive prosecutions against his enemies. I know all of the judges. Many of them were my former trial partners. Many of them were my former either colleagues or supervisees at the DC U.S. Attorney's Office. They've gone on to do great things, and I've toiled away largely in anonymity, and I'm fine with that. They will act as a bulwark against Donald Trump's.
Do you hear this? Now, putting aside the fact that President Trump has to go after these judges, he has to go after the DOJ because of the lawfare they employed against him. And not just against him, against the country, against pro-life people, against Dr. Ethan Haim. They're now trying to issue a gag order because that case against Ethan Haim, he was the whistleblower in Texas who found that his hospital was still illegally treating children with wrong sex hormones and surgery. Dr. Ethan Haim, they've doubled down on him. They admitted, yeah, we used evidence that was a lie in a grand jury hearing, but we didn't know it was a lie. This guy is a hardcore anti-Trumper, hardcore liberal, explaining a circumstance that shows how bad the judiciary is and the DOJ is, and that they can protect themselves. It goes the same for unions as you wash your way down. We'll let them continue.
Attempts at lawlessness and vindictiveness. Of that, I am certain. And even Carl Nichols, a Trump appointee yesterday, said, and speaking out of school, because he probably shouldn't have said it, but these are desperate times, it would be I don't know what his exact word was, a damn shame. That's not exactly what, if all of a sudden, all of these folks who were convicted by juries of attacking the Capitol on January 6th were pardoned. It would be awful.
All of them. All of them, says Kirshner. Even the 70-year-old grandmas who walked in the Capitol through open doors, stayed within the velvet ropes, took a selfie, prayed, and went home. But he's right. The judiciary in D.C. will gather around themselves. They will circle these wagons, which is why we need reform. Now, she, as labor secretary, cannot reform the judiciary, but she can reform government unions. Government unions are who the employees at the DOJ belong to, or what they belong to. This pick cannot help make America great again. There's one pick in particular that is, well, I want to say mind-blowing, but it's not. It's another Fox News host. Look, I like Pete Hegseth. I think he could be a great Secretary of Defense. I do not hold that Pete Hegseth is simply, quote, simply an infantryman or simply a soldier. Yeah, he did two or three deployments on our behalf. He has 2 advanced degrees from Harvard. He's got an undergrad from Princeton. He spent his life studying warfare. He spent the past 4 years as a Fox News host visiting with the heavies of heavies. I think he's a guy who could be a fantastic Secretary of Defense, probably world-changing, definitely committed to cleaning up the military. So it's not like I'm waiting for some Ivy League hoo-ha to come along. He is an Ivy League hoo-ha, but he also happens to be an ordinary guy. But there's one pick in particular that's got me very, very concerned. We'll get to that. It's related in a way to Javier Becerra. He's the current secretary of HHS. And let's remember a little bit about this guy.
Yes or no, though? Do you do the full criminal history checks for the potential sponsors of these children?
Well, yes, we follow best practices.
Right. The answer is no.
It's a yes, we follow child welfare best practices.
Yeah, that's not my question. My question is, do you do background checks, the full criminal records, public background checks for the FBI National Criminal History?
We certainly check for criminal records. We check for in the registry. We do, again, the different things that the foundation, that
the rule I'm talking about says you do not.
I'm sorry?
The rule that we're talking about that was released on April 30th, 2024 says you do not.
We do not what?
That you do not carry out FBI National Criminal History checks for all potential sponsors.
We do background checks on every individual.
Right, but that's a slippery description. What I'm saying is this rule is pretty clear in what it's saying, that you do not provide the kind of background checks, which, by the way, has created the problems. Let me move on because in the interest of time. Are you familiar with Maria Gonzalez, an 11-year-old girl who lived in Pasadena, Texas? In August 2023, Ms. Gonzalez was allegedly by Juan Carlos Garcia Rodriguez, a Guatemalan national who appealed at the southern border as a UAC in January of 2023 and was 17 years old. A month later, HHS released Garcia Rodriguez to a sponsor with a criminal history and who previously had 2 other UACs in his care. Failed to enroll them at school as required by HHS. How about the situation with respect to another individual, Kayla Hamilton? Are you familiar with Walter Javier Martinez? Martinez was a 17-year-old from El Salvador who appeared at the border as a UAC in March of 2022. Months later, in July 22, he Kayla Hamilton, a 20-year-old woman in Maryland. After Martinez's release from the border and before Mrs. Hamilton's tragic death, HHS released him to a sponsor in May of 2022. Despite Martinez having gang tattoos and an arrest record for illicit association with MS-13. Mr. Secretary, how can you credibly claim that HHS is working to protect these children And by the way, children we're talking about in the order of magnitude of 400 and something thousand children, which you are dismissing that they are lost. Let me ask you a very specific question, Mr. Secretary. Can you account for the whereabouts of those 400 and something thousand children? The 320,000 that were put in the report by the Inspector General, the 85,000 that we've talked about before in 2023. Do you know where all of these children are and that they are safe? Yes or no?
Congressman, as I explained the process, we get these kids when they are referred to us by the Department of Homeland Security. We then provide them with care while they are in our custody. We lose custody of those kids once we find a vetted sponsor with whom they can stay.
A vetted sponsor that the people that they're entrusted to? Because you issue a rule that doesn't even do the background check? That's what you think is appropriate care for these children? I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
We do background checks.
This guy, Bacara, should have been impeached. He's not going to be. And he smirks his way through this video. He smirks his way through every bit of testimony. We're going deep on Substack today on this exact topic. There was a trafficking expert. And what she did is she went through and recounted some of the abuse a particular girl underwent. And then points out that it's not an isolated case. A girl brought illegally to this country. Just this morning, I was reading in show prep about a girl who's 2 years old who showed up at the border with a list of names on paper. No way to know who this girl is. Now, the Department of Health and Human Services is a big department, and it should be looked at as a monstrosity that should be broken up, not empowered. President Trump has a Surgeon General in mind. It's not HHS. It's a cabinet-level position. It's supposedly the top doctor in the United States. We have got to talk about this. The in-depth, by the way, the ToddHermanShow.substack.com, you can see the in-depth look at what happened to this girl and other kids who have been smuggled into the country illegally. It's something that we do on Substack because we can go in-depth there without concerns of, well, you know. Some guy finally went and did this thing. I've been wondering if any American's going to do. He's an American citizen. He thought, you know what? The illegals are getting such good stuff. What if I go across the border and sneak back in? Will I get the same good stuff? I'll show you that in a second, or play the audio for you at least. It is what? Gosh, it's the Monday before Thanksgiving. That is, if you're watching this in the same day or listening to it on the 25th of October, 2024. What's your Thanksgiving table going to be like without Bone Frog Cellars? I think you may have people walk in and leave. I think they may walk into the house, everything looks good, and then they're going to say, what, no Bone Frog Cellars? There still might be time. I don't know, but go check out bonefrogcellars.com/Todd. Every single bottle of wine says on it, God Country Team. It has the Bone Frog insignia. That is a sign of a fallen Navy SEAL. That's there because the CEO, Tim Cruikshank, a dear friend of mine, is a former Navy SEAL. He did 3 deployments on our half and came back and was a BUDS instructor. You've heard the name Bone Frog with the coffees. I think coffee is a necessary thing to have at any sort of Thanksgiving, particularly the day after. You can go to bonefrogcoffee.com/Todd, get 10% off the coffees, and double down on Bone Frog Cellars. We have the 2015 vintages in our house, the Cabernet and the Merlot. I don't drink wine, but the people who do drink wine in my family and friend group absolutely loved it. bonefrogcellars.com/Todd. And of course, 10% of proceeds go to support the families of fallen Navy SEALs. We read some of the headlines, and this all makes sense, this experiment this guy went through. This is from the Denver Post. Denver mayor suggests using Denver police to block mass deportations under Trump. That's Denver Mayor Mike Johnston. Then you can turn to the Daily Wire. Illegal alien charged with 14-year-old girl in Denver as opposes a mayor's deportation effort. What? A legal immigrant 14-year-old girl in Denver as mayor opposes deportation effort. See, these headlines keep popping up side by side because the problem's getting worse. Because the cartels understand it is, in fact, free and open season to walk into America. And governments who want to get rid of their criminals understand this as well. You can pretend all day long it's not happening. And yet, of course, it's happening. This American decided to go undertake a little experiment. He liked that 10 grand people are getting, the $2,200 a month and walking around money, the free hotels, the free air flights. So he decided to go get some for himself.
We know migrants receive a lot of benefits. What are some of the benefits that they receive?
About $2,000 a month in cash, about $1,500 in like the food stamp beneficiaries, like SNAP benefits.
So, by the way, as he's doing the interview, he's wearing an apron and a probably hairnet type hat because he works at labor.
They'll get about $1,500 in that. A phone that's paid for 2 years that they don't have to worry about, and housing over their head for at least 3 months minimum until they can actually get put into a process.
And is it expensive to live here?
Yeah, you can't even find a studio for less than $1,600 a month, and that's a 1-bedroom.
And they're getting free housing.
And they're getting free housing.
Have you ever considered hopping over the fence and then coming back as an illegal?
Yes, but it does not work. It does not work.
Have you done it?
Yes, I have, and it did not play out correctly at all. I was let know that you could spend up to 7 years minimum federal time.
So you could go to jail for trying to come in as an illegal, but the illegals can come in.
Yeah.
Could you benefit? Could you get any help from the government that would help you in your life right now instead of them giving it to illegals?
Yes, if I was able to receive the benefits that they're receiving, I wouldn't have to work 2 jobs just to supply a house for me and my girl. I'd actually be able to work one and welcome our son into our life.
Doesn't seem fair, does it? The newcomers. So with the labor secretary being a horrible pick, the FCC person being a very good pick, Brendan Carr, Pete Hegseth being a good pick, there's one other, unrelated to the border, unrelated to labor, and it's all about healthcare. This person should be nowhere near power. President Trump has nominated this person to be our Surgeon General. Here's just a tiny snippet of her praising Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook for shutting down discussion on issues related to public health.
I am so excited, and I thank and I commend Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg for taking action, because this affects everyone. This affects our children. It affects adults. I mean, just look at the recent measles outbreak, the biggest outbreak that we've had in decades with measles. And that's no joke. Measles can cause brain inflammation and pneumonia and ear infections and hearing loss and death. So it's about time that they are taking action. And I hope and pray that other social media platforms will follow suit and do the same thing.
That's the Surgeon General pick, and that's the parts we can play and not get in trouble. On Substack tomorrow, we're going to go way deep on this lady, including the fact, I don't know if I have this in the video, a video she did dancing at a particular time in history, wearing a particular uniform. So that'll be on the ToddHermanShow.substack.com. It's difficult to tell if this is an actual happening or if this is a staged video, and that's indicative of this time, because the times we live in, there's so much fraud, there's so much insanity that it's difficult to piece this apart. Alex was the first one to call this out. He doesn't know if it's real. I had this inkling that I think the third person to speak in this video is not a very good actor. We'll get to this in just a second. I spoke about corruption on Thursday. My friend Zach Abraham did his last free live webinar of the year, and he's the Chief Investment Officer of Bulwark Capital Management. Some of the questions were fascinating, having to do with the Trump economy. Here's some things that President Trump has said on the great side, on the Make America Great side, freeing up the pipeline projects in America, particularly some of the key ones that have been blocked down. That will initially and immediately get us back into being a net exporter of fuels, stopping the ridiculous attempt to stop natural gas in the country, perhaps being the president who gets micronuclear plants installed around America. If that happens, it would be the biggest, most fundamental positive shift in our economy in hundreds of years. He's the guy that could get this done. If you're in a buy and hold situation, doing the 80-20 stock bond mix, how do you take advantage of that? I mean, if you're buy and hold, you might see an increase in the stock market from that. But what if you could pick specific companies and take action on them, hundreds of companies at a time or thousands? This is much more like Bulwark Capital Management's approach, which is predicated upon risk management, paying attention to world events and hedges upon hedges. Last week, Zach provided this example. There's a company that's in the gold business, and Zach was raised around gold mines. And their stock, he said, was operating somewhere around some really small amount, like 30 cents. And it's just up and noticed. But the fundamentals of the company are fantastic. The cash flow is fantastic. The CEO is buying their stock. If you took the assets they own, okay, this is their land, this is their mines, this is the equipment, this is the gold that's been, or silver, I think it is. It's actually silver, not gold. Silver that's confirmed to be in the ground. It would come out at about a $23 share price. This thing is trading at 30 cents. Now, Zach made clear, look, there's some debt, there's some structured and unstructured debt on the books, but $23 for a 30-cent purchase, that's what hedging is about. That's risk management. Eventually, math will catch up. Other investors will realize, oh, my goodness, that sort of return. You could go take a look at your portfolio with Zach, sit on a conference call. He'll look at your retirement plan. He'll look at the money that you have, cash assets and otherwise land. You and your spouse can talk with him about retirement, what you think it is, and what the math says. It can help you see if your portfolio is being actively managed. She'll be able to tell you that. And active management of portfolio can reduce risk and volatility. So just go get a free conference call together with him. It's super, super easy. Call him at 866-779-RISK or go to knowyourriskradio.com. He'll put a time in his schedule. You guys can meet face-to-face if you want to go fly and see him in Seattle or just do a video call. It's 866-779-RISK or go to knowyourriskradio.com.
Investment advisory services offered through Trek Financial LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. Any references to performance of securities are thought to be materially accurate, and actual performance may differ. Investments involve risk and are not guaranteed. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Trek 24308.
So someone somewhere can help us figure out if this is a real video. It's supposedly happening in the state of California. A guy's been pulled over. He's a pretty big dude, kind of a shaggy beard on him. And the officer seems to be very, very patient. And I need you to help us figure out, is this staged or did this really happen?
So you do currently have a California driver's license. You just don't have a physical copy on you at the moment.
That's my preferred method of identification.
And this is?
It's a cat collar. I'm currently identifying as a cat.
Fair enough. The information here on the tag, I'm assuming, belongs to you, the boyfriend?
Yeah. That's so rude. I hope you know I'm recording.
Well,
okay, so he seems like a bad actor. That seems like a poorly delivered line. Everyone else seems really solid. That's what put this into question for me.
It wasn't my intention to offend you, but he just identified as a cat, and you're wearing a Harriet's Waltz t-shirt, so forgive me if I came to a conclusion that you guys are involved in some sort of a homosexual arrangement.
I'm not mad that you think we're together, but you're using gendered language. Besides, I'm not his boyfriend.
Yeah, it seems staged.
Owner.
Okay. Well, look, we can do this the hard way if you'd like. I can have this car towed because last I checked, a cat is not licensed to operate a motor vehicle in the state of California. We can have animal control come get you, take you to a shelter where your owner can retrieve you for a fee of $70 after you're given the necessary immunizations, which do include a rabies shot, possibly even spayed or neuter, whichever you prefer or identify with. Is that what you guys want to do here?
What should we do? No, I don't have $70.
Sir, I can also request that a mental health care professional come down here on scene and do an evaluation of you because you're considering letting him take a rabies shot rather than just give me an ID, use some manners so I can give you your ticket and move along.
Okay, so Alex says, okay, are you saying full on fake?
Yes.
Okay. Because the guy who's the third guy speaking is, but the two guys, the cat guy and the cop guy, they're good actors. No, that is quality acting. But here's the thing: society's in this situation where you look at that, you have no idea if that's real or not, because the scenarios are real. This is where this all eventually leads in this self-identification game. It all leads this way. Got a series of notes over the weekend, and it has to do with us talking about God on the show. 3 or 4 notes came in sort of the same flavor, and I just want to address this head on. It's the accusation that I have become a soft kitten cat, that I no longer tell it like it is. I no longer go straight into the heart of liberalism. I'm no longer a hard man. The goal of the show has changed, and I hope people get this. You've heard me describe Saving America as a consolation prize. It is a consolation prize. you will have plenty of time in eternity to think about the country you left behind, which won't exist any longer. You'll have eternity to imagine that. One of the accusations is coming across is since I have become a discipled Christian that I'm far too willing to give ground. Really? The given ground would be what? I'm one of the few conservative hosts who to this day speaks in defense of traditional marriage, defining it as one man and one woman. I try to do this from a perspective of love. The reason I take those topics and intermingle them with things like heterosexual sin, fornication, and adultery is because the same sin. The homosexual acts are not a special class of sin. That is not how God sees it. There are these guardrails set up. So that makes me a soft Kit Kat, that I will speak in defense of marriage in that way as the GOP has removed all opposition to it. No, I think it has to do with the language we're using. The goal of the program is to save souls and America as a consolation prize. Race. I believe I'm one of the few hosts, and correct me if I'm wrong, who suggests that race doesn't exist, that it's a construct. It's an evil construct, who will time and time again go back to the view of Jesus takes of us in the body of Christ. There's neither Greek nor Jew, servant nor master. That's being a soft soap guy. That's laying down for the enemy. On the topic of this lies of transgenderism, I won't stand down to anyone on this. I'm one of the few hosts who's talking about the ultimate arrival point for this, which is transhumanism. I don't hear anyone else talking about that. I know I got kicked off of WABC radio 2 years ago for mentioning the fact that in China, health authorities have been experimenting with installing pig wombs in men, so little babies can be gestated in the womb of a pig. That's an experiment that's ongoing. So these emails that come in, some of them very, very nice, some of them written with brotherly love, other than written as flat accusations. You've become weak since you became a Christian. Jesus was many things, but he was not weak. He was the bravest man who ever existed because he gave up being impervious to harm, impervious to hurt, impervious to cold, impervious to fear, impervious to being killed. He knew exactly what was going to be done to him, and he came and did it anyway. So I have a question for people who've written me these notes, because I got 3 or 4 of them over the weekend. First of all, am I upset by them? No, they're communications from a podcast family. That doesn't upset me. What does get me a little bit hot is when people say things like, you need to be more like this host or that host. No, I don't. I had every opportunity in the world to continue to burn the libs down talk radio. I could have moved to Phoenix or New York or Los Angeles or Detroit or any number of radio stations and gone and done morning drive radio, done in the old-fashioned way. And you know what? It's fun radio. I miss it. I miss taking calls. I miss visiting with you in that way. I miss that form of radio. I don't like being on camera. Simply what we have to do. So I'll give you this question here in a second because I think it's an important one for you to answer as members of the podcast family, particularly these 3 or 4 people who chose this weekend to write to me. I was one of the first people to have Mike Lindell on a show. Do you know that? I interviewed Lindell about 7 years ago. And I was one of the first hosts to come right out and ask him about his drug use and about what it was like to be an addict and how bad was it. I think I was one of the first people who ever asked him, hey, did you ever have to sell blood for money? Because I did. Did you ever do that, Mike? I asked him about the coming down process, what it was like to no longer need the drug. And you know what he said to me? He said, I couldn't have done it if the Holy Spirit hadn't filled the hole. It was a great interview. One of the first people to point out the fact that they were going to try to destroy Mike. I just heard this. We just now got this from Mike. There's a major retailer that has decided to cancel a bunch of orders with MyPillow. Related to the election stuff, who knows? President Trump won. The retailer doesn't like that, doesn't want to be associated. Who knows? What I do know is that Mike asked us to help. There's an opportunity right now to get the standard classic MyPillow for only $14.88, the queen size pillow for $18.88, the king size pillow $19.88, body pillows $29.98, and multi-use pillows for $9.88. You know about MyPillow. I don't need to talk about the legacy of the company. I can talk to you about this. I've had the same MyPillows now for about 8 years. I put them in the washer and the dryer, and they puff back up every single time to their original shape you get when you get them back out from straight from him. And of course, you know they're made in America. You know they're made in small town America. And you know Mike Lindell's story. So right now, go to mypillow.com/Todd. Use promo code Todd to get the standard MyPillow for only $14.88, the lowest price this has ever existed. Use promo code Todd for discounts on the entire MyPillow Classic collection. Grab a gift that says you deserve the best comfort at mypillow.com/Todd. That's mypillow.com/Todd. Here's my question to the people who wrote me notes saying that I've gone soft since I became a Christian. Or, well, I've been a Christian, but since I became discipled. Is it going soft to ask you the following question? Do you know where you're going to go when you die? Is it going soft? See, here's the thing you don't know. What President Trump's going to do. You know what he said he's going to do? I believe he's going to do a lot of what he says he's going to do. Here's another thing you don't know. If he's going to live more than 3 months in office. I pray he does. I mean, they tried to take him out twice, or at least, I think, let one through twice. You don't know how the geopolitical factions of our world are going to respond to Trump. We think we know, but we don't know. But you do know this. You will die. Is it going soft to make the focus of the show in the last, few years of my life? I don't want to live past 64. Is it a thing of going soft for me to ask you to make the decision? I don't know of other hosts who are saying that, but then again, I don't watch podcasts. I don't listen to radio. I don't have time. The softness of the show is this. I made a career out of jumping down the throats of liberals, and I could do it again in 5 seconds. I could turn that part of myself on in 5 seconds. And sometimes it sneaks through. That's not how Jesus did it. And I'm not Jesus. I don't get to turn over the temple tables. The point of the show is this. I was given an opportunity to speak God's word to tens of millions of people, and I only did it a few times. I think God said, let's try it again. This time from the beginning, this time with me at the center. So my question to people who are questioning this is me going soft. I have this question for you. Have you gone soft in not making a commitment? I made a commitment. Have you? This is the Todd Herman Show. Please go be well, be strong, be kind, and please make every effort to walk in the light of Christ.